Welcome to week 2 of our series on the Didache. And if you were not here last week, I'll give you a bit of an overview so that you can pick up right where we ended last week. And the title of our sermon this morning is Being Formed in the Way. As I mentioned last week, if you would like to study a bit more about this ancient manual, this ancient teaching from the first century, this book, I highly recommend Didache by Thomas O'Laughlin. You also can just Google Didache and you can find all of that online for free. There's no copyright on it. It's been around for more than 100 years. It's been around for like 2,000 years. So you can find different translations online if you would like to read through this ancient text. It's not too long, and then that will give you an overview of the things that we're talking about over these 4 or 5 weeks. Now, a little bit of an overview from last week. The Didache was written in the first century. So we are talking about a teaching from 2,000 years ago. It's the time from the very first followers of Jesus. This would have been some of the first generation, second generation followers of Jesus. And the Didache, as we talked about last week, it was a manual on basically how to be a follower of Jesus. So you have these disciples, and they're trying to figure out what does it mean for us to follow Jesus with our lives, and then how do we equip and train others to go and follow Jesus with their lives. So this would have been, just like the New Testament letters, some of the earliest workings out of, well, how do we individually, and then us as a community, how do we put into practice the teachings of Jesus? Didache means teaching or training. So we could say that this ancient text, the title of it was, well, here's the teaching, or here is the training. And what this does by looking at it over these couple of weeks, it offers us a window into what the earliest form of Christianity looked like. And we can't just apply everything from this ancient manual to our lives, because obviously there's a 2,000-year gap. But what we're trying to do is look at some of the underlying principles, some of the different ideas that were being spoken about, that were being tossed around, so then we can then apply these principles to our lives and our journey of following Jesus in the 21st century. Last week, we looked at the Didache as this offering or an invitation into 2 different roads. There are 2 different paths. There's the way of life, the road that leads to life, and then the path that leads to death. Everyone last week, if you're just joining us, I guess you can give your answer as well, but everyone last week said that they would rather walk the way of life. Anyone want to amend their answer? All right, so yes, we are all in agreement. The way of life is the way to go. Who doesn't want to be filled with more love and joy and peace and hope? And the Didache is saying the way of Jesus produces peace, hope, love, joy in your life. It becomes contagious and then it spreads. And by you walking this road, it brings healing not only to your life, but to the world around us. And so this is the offering. The Didache is offering a way to help you tangibly put into practice this way of life. And this morning, I want to offer 3 principles of how we do this, of how we walk the way of life. And then I will offer you a practice that you can go home with at the end of our service today. Here's the first principle. Don't confuse details for the Spirit. And let me explain what I mean by this. And basically, the sermon, for me, it's 3 of the most intriguing portions of the Didache. As I was reading through it, there were 3, there's more than 3. Please read through it because it is very interesting. But for me, these were 3 of the highlights. And as I read, I was like, oh, these are great. They're great for me, but I also wanted to present them to you as well. In the ancient church, baptism was a very big deal. If you became a follower of Jesus, you would go through a time of preparation. You would prepare yourself to be baptized. The Didache was the manual or the teaching that would prepare you for baptism. If you said, hey, I want to follow Jesus with my life, I want to walk this path, you would be given, they didn't have copies of the Didache floating around, but you would have someone orally pass along to you, well, here's the teaching, here's the training, here's how you prepare yourself. Now, here's what the Didache says about baptism. With regard to baptism, here is the teaching, here's the training. You are to baptize in this way. Once you've gone back over all that is in the two ways. So read through this teaching, read through this training, learn about the way of life and what makes it different than the way of death. Once you have done all of this, you baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit in living water. Living water referring to water that is flowing, a river or a stream. So this is how you're to baptize. There's a very particular way, it appears, right, in which you're supposed to baptize someone. Well, watch what happens. However, if you don't have access to living water, well, then baptize in some other water. If you don't have any cold water, well, then use some warm water. So here's the ideal way to do it. But if you don't have access to that way to baptize someone, here's a few other ways that you can do it, and they're going to be okay. But if you can't get access to either running or still water, well, then pour water 3 times on the head in the name of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Here's the way to do it. But if that doesn't work, well, you can also do it this way. If that doesn't work, well, you can do it this way. And if all else fails, if you can't even do it in that way, well, that's fine. Just a little bit of sprinkle right there in the head, and everything is going to be okay. It still essentially counts as being baptized. What we see in the Didache, which I find very interesting, is the first followers of Jesus, they were balancing practicality with ritual. Sometimes rituals become so ingrained. There's a certain way to do things, and any way that you deviate from that ritual, well, that's not the way we do it. It doesn't count as you having embodied and acted out that ritual. What we find here in the Didache is there is this idea, or there is this way in which the followers of Jesus are saying what really counts more than the details is that you follow the spirit of that which you are doing. Because in the ancient world, there were all these initiation ceremonies all throughout the ancient Greek and Roman world. And if you wanted to become a member of a certain group, you had to do this. You had to follow a certain formula. And if you didn't follow that formula, well, then your initiation wouldn't count. And so what's happening here is the followers of Jesus are saying, yes, be a part of our community. We want you to be a member. We're giving you some ways to do it, but what really matters is the spirit behind the ritual. And what happens is, what we have seen all throughout the years is when, as Christians, we allow the details to be greater than the spirit, it creates all sorts of divisions. And we see this all throughout the Christian church. Because we're focusing on the details rather than the spirit that is leading us to perform certain rituals. Here it is in Acts. Philip, one of the first followers of Jesus, he has this vision. Go here. There's a man who's reading scripture. He doesn't understand it. And so the eunuch asks Philip, tell me, please, who's this prophet talking about? The eunuch is reading Isaiah, but he has no understanding. Well, what am I reading? Well, then Philip began with that very passage of scripture and told him the good news about Jesus. This man is reading about Jesus, but he has no idea who Jesus is. So Philip comes and tells him all about Jesus, his life, what happened, the good news of grace and God's mercy upon his life. And then as they traveled along, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, hey, here's some water. Well, what can stand in the way of my being baptized? And he gave orders to stop this chariot. Philip and the eunuch went down to the water, and Philip baptized him. Baptism is a public declaration. What's happening as someone is baptized, and I'm sure many of you have been baptized, and I know some of you have spoken about baptism and your desire to be baptized. If that is you, please come and see me, because I know there's a few people here who desire to be baptized because your life has been changed. You have met the resurrected Christ, and you want to publicly make a declaration saying, I desire to commit my life to the way of Jesus. I've had an encounter of healing, of God's grace, and I want to publicly declare this to everyone. And that's what baptism is all about. It's a physical act to symbolize an inner change. Sometimes we get caught up on the details. Is it cold water, warm water? Is it a living, flowing body of water? Or can I do it in a bathtub? Can I do it in a, what did we do last year? We rented a kiddie pool and baptized in a kiddie pool. Well, what if you don't have water? Well, a little sprinkle, even that would suffice. The idea of baptism is someone getting up in front of a group and saying, I am publicly declaring my commitment to walking the way of Jesus. And what happens when we get caught up on details, we miss the point, and it creates divisions. Here's a second principle. Let's call this one grace. Here's the Didache. If you are able to bear the whole of the Lord's yoke, well, then you will be complete. However, if you're not able to bear that yoke, do what you can. I love this. What this is communicating is that change, transformation takes time. The way of following Jesus, it's a journey. You're on a road. If you have kids, if you're on a road trip, they're always, are we there? How much longer? And you're, okay, it's going to be 20 more minutes, 30 more, it's however long it might be. They want to get to the destination. When we commit to walking the path of Jesus, there's a destination that we're walking toward, but it takes time to get there. And if you put all this pressure on yourself to be a particular person, to be at a certain destination right now, what you are doing is you're negating grace. And you're trying to put all this pressure on yourself to be a certain way, but in reality, it's a journey. And you can only take one step at a time on a journey. It's not like Star Trek where you can just beam yourself to a destination. The only way to get to the destination of where you're going, you have to put one foot in front of the next, and that takes time. Let's talk about John Newton. I asked Elle to play Amazing Grace. John Newton is the man who wrote Amazing Grace. He had quite the colorful life. From what I've read about John Newton, he was not a good person. And he was a sailor, and the captains of the ships that he sailed on, that he served on, said that he was probably one of the rudest, most foul-mouthed sailors they had ever met. He was also a slave trader, and he supported the slave trade. Then, after a whole bunch of different events, he was on a ship, caught in a storm, and his conversion to following Jesus began in the midst of that storm. Eventually, he became an abolitionist. But that didn't happen right away. His life wasn't changed in that moment when he said that he was going to commit his life to following Jesus. It happened over time. He had this experience on a ship in the midst of a storm, and he said, God, I'm going to follow you. But his life didn't turn around in that instant. It took time. It took many months and years of learning and walking with others. Putting pressure on yourself to be somewhere other than where you are takes away the lightness of grace. Here we are in Philippians. This is Paul, Philippians 1. Being confident of this, he who began a good work in you will bring it on to completion when? The day of Christ Jesus. Your journey of transformation is not complete until the end of your physical life here on earth. God is at work in you. The Spirit is at work in you. As you trust that, as you lean into that, as you allow that truth to soak into your bones, I believe that is what offers the strength and the power for transformation to occur. When you make it all about yourself and what you can do in your power, it takes away any need for grace and the Spirit's power actively at work in your life. Trust that God is at work within you. And then follow each prompting that comes your way, one step at a time. Here's principle number 3. Let's call it not just sin avoidance. Here's the Didache. Now, by contrast, here is the way of death. And then what we have described here are a whole bunch of different behaviors to avoid. Sometimes what happens in the Christian faith is there is this mindset, there's this idea that the Christian journey is all about avoiding certain behaviors. And the way in which you follow Jesus, well, as long as I'm not doing these things, well, then I'm okay. I remember when I first started as a pastor, I had people that would ask me, okay, you're a pastor, what can't you do? It's like there was this focus on as long as you're not gambling, drinking, whatever it is that you want to talk about, as long as you're not doing these things, well, then everything is okay in your pursuit of following Jesus. But the Didache continues, this is the way of death. All of those do not know the reward of righteousness. The way of death, it's those who are not devoted to what is good and who do not give just judgments because they're not looking out for what is good, but for what is evil. Have you ever met someone and they're always looking out for the devil? And they spend so much of their time just trying to stay away from the devil. Well, that's where your focus is. And the truth is, where you place your attention matters. And if you're just simply looking for the evil around you, well, that's the only thing you're going to be able to find. And your eyes won't be open to all the ways that you can participate in the good around you. I mean, I love this right here. They're not looking out for what's good. They don't have their eyes open to how they can serve and bring love and healing to the world. They're just looking out, trying to avoid all the bad things in life. But it continues, well, these people, they lack gentleness, they lack patience, they love worthless things, pursue money. These people are without mercy for the poor and do nothing on behalf of the oppressed. They don't know their maker. They're murderers of children, corrupters of God's image. They turn away from those in need, oppress the afflicted, are advocates of the wealthy. They treat the poor unjustly. The Christian faith, it's not about folding your hands and making sure that you aren't falling into sin, but it's about how you actively engage with the world, how you actively bring love, embody the love of Jesus to the world around you. And what I want to do at this point is I want to bring Debbie up. Many of you know that Debbie just went on a trip, and Debbie is a beautiful picture of someone who is putting into practice the words of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus. Debbie is someone who's not just living there with her hands folded, but rather is looking for the good and the ways that she can serve and bring Christ to the world.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As some of you know, I am a physical therapist, and that is kind of just some of the background information you need to know for this. I don't know. Got it. Okay. So I'm a physical therapist. And so I've, with a friend of mine from PT school, we really want to be able to use our skills as a physical therapist to go out into the world and work with people who don't have access to usual health care. And so for the past couple of years, we've gone out to various different countries and partnered with an organization that sets up like pop-up medical clinics in countries that don't have as much access to healthcare. And it's a Christian-based organization. And so we go and we set up these medical clinics and not only bring healthcare to people in these areas, but also bring to them, share a little bit with them about Jesus and just the love that God has for them. And so this past April, I went to Ecuador. And before I get too far into exactly what I did, I just want to, and before I forget, I want to thank all of you because you guys were all very instrumental and helpful in getting me out on this trip. One thing that we do in preparation for the trips is collect medical supplies, collect assistive devices, to collect braces, collect those physical things that people need, and we bring those to the countries that we go to. And so you guys were all very helpful in bringing in some of those supplies, and you can see I package them all up and get them in a suitcase and bring them through TSA and everything, and it's always an adventure. But thank you for your support with those medical supplies. Some of you helped financially. Thank you for that. All of your questions and encouragement and really just helped me mentally and spiritually prepare for the trip. And then just all your prayers were really helpful as well. So a big thank you to all of you as I was preparing for this trip. So we went to Ecuador, and that's just a picture of some banana trees. There's a lot of bananas in Ecuador. We arrived. Ecuador is a country that does have Christianity as like their main like faith-based like religion. Primarily, many people there would call themselves Catholics. There are a ton of Catholic churches throughout the country, and they're all big, they're all beautiful. And that's one of the churches that was in a square right outside one of our hotels. And we were there, we arrived on Easter morning. And so on Easter morning, we were out and about and we were walking around, and we walked into this particular Catholic church on Easter morning, and the place was packed. There were people streaming in, and the place was full. But we were asking some of our hosts there, like, is this this is Easter? Like, is this unusual? Is this typical? And they're like, this is very unusual. They said, usually these churches, they're empty. No one goes. It's one of those like, okay, we're Catholic, but we go to church on Christmas and Easter. And the rest of the day was like, they're like, people go to church on Easter, and then the rest of the day is same old, same old. And so even though, this is like a Catholic country, people don't really necessarily know or have a personal relationship with God and with Jesus. So there is a big need for that there. The picture on the left, we were in a picture of the city we were in. We were in a town called Machala, and that's primarily where we did our work. So basically, we set up a medical clinic. We had a team of 20 people, and we went with dentists, we went with doctors, we went with nurses, physical therapists, so a lot of different medical professionals. The first day, we set up our pharmacy. The one picture is us counting out medications so that we can prepare to give out all kinds of medications and vitamins to everyone who comes in the clinic. And we have someone in the dental realm working there as well. But of course, I went in the capacity as a physical therapist, so I'm just going to share with you a couple of impact stories of who I worked with there. This lady, she had hip surgery a couple months ago, and since her hip surgery, she had not been standing, she had not been walking. So it had been a couple months. They had said it might have even been like up to a year that this particular woman had not stood up. I looked at her, I said, there's no reason why that shouldn't be. And so I, with some help from one of the girls who was helping us out, we got this woman standing up, and as soon as we stood her up, this was the first time she stood in months, and like the tears just start streaming down her face. She's just so overjoyed. She did such a fantastic job standing. I said, look, we can walk. And so we took some steps, and she did fantastic. And it was the first steps that she had taken in months. And she was overjoyed. Her son was overjoyed, and she did fantastic. In the realm of the clinic, typically, people come in once and we never see them again, just the way this particular clinic is set up. But I told this lady, look, you have so much potential. Can you come back tomorrow? And she said, well, of course. And so she came back the next day, and we walked with her the next day, and she did even better. And then I said, can you come back tomorrow? And she came back the next day, and we walked the next day, and she did even better. And we worked with her son, who's in one of the pictures there, on showing him how he can walk with her and how he can help get her better. And every day when she came in, I said, did you walk with your son last night? And she said, yes. And so this case was special because this was someone where I knew she was really this was going to change her life. She was really going to, be able to move again and just change her life, change her son's life, her family's life, really for the better. So she was really special. The gentleman on the right, he came into the clinic, and he came in a wheelchair, and I didn't see him first. My friend saw him first. She pointed him out to me. She said, look, Debbie, you have to see that guy. He has Parkinson's. That's what you specialize in. You need to see that guy. I was like, oh, yes, he's got Parkinson's. We're going to work with him. I was like, I'm going to see him next. So I turn around, I work with my patient that I'm currently working with, finish up, I turn around again, and he's gone. And I'm like, oh no, I lost him. He was just seeing the physician. So after he was done seeing the physician, he came back out again. He was waiting in line. I said, great, I'm going to get him next. I finished working with the patient that I'm currently with. I turn around, and he was gone again. I was like, no. Apparently he was getting restless, and so they had left the area, and then they came back a little bit later, and I was able to snag him. And with his Parkinson's, he had a lot of dementia. His memory and his cognition just weren't there anymore. But I was chatting with him. I was chatting with his son. And I'm speaking in English, obviously. We have interpreters. But as I'm speaking in English, every once in a while, I get a couple words back from him that are also in English. And so I'm asking his son, it's like, he's speaking English. Does he understand? He's like, yeah. He's like, he lived in New York for 40 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, you live in New York? I live in New York. And his face just lit up. And he's like, yeah, I lived on 2nd Ave. I was like, oh, no way. I'm right there. And so it was just one of those moments where there was in this man who has just so much confusion. It was just a moment of clarity for him where he just lit up. And I'm standing and I'm walking with him and trying to get him to move. And all of a sudden he spins me around and grabs my hands and he starts dancing with me. And we start to use the dancing as a treatment technique for him. But then his son's explained to me, he's like, yeah, when he met his wife, his mother, when he met his wife, that was something that they really just enjoyed doing together, was they danced together. And so it was just a moment to really just even make just a positive, short change in this man's life. I worked with the son a lot in terms of teaching him on how to care for his father. He was going through, he's like, I don't know how to work with him. When this is happening, what do I do? So I was able to give the son a lot of education on how to help with him. But this gentleman, he was just the cutest thing ever. He had stopped in at the eyeglass clinic and had picked up the sunglasses that you see him wearing, and he just wouldn't let them go. It was like a new toy that he just needed to hang on to, and he was just loving them. So he was another special patient. A lot of the people that we saw did have orthopedic injuries, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, knee pain. And so we worked with a lot of those kinds of patients as well. Of course, we were there to treat patients physically, but we were also there to treat them spiritually as well. And so after each patient that we worked with at the end of the session, kind of a routine was like we'd always ask them, can I pray for you? Is there anything I can pray for you for? What's going on in your life? Let's talk about that. And can I pray for you? And I would say, 99% of the people there were like, yes, please pray for me. This is what's going on. Please pray for my family, pray for my country, pray for this and that. And so it was really special to be able to take the time to pray for these people, and not only, like I said, help them physically, but also spiritually as well. One really nice thing about this trip was that we partnered with one of the local churches there, and that local church was phenomenal. The picture on the left is like the entire team there. We had 20 Americans there, but you can see the picture. There's a whole lot more than 20 people in that picture, and that's everyone locally from that church who was helping us out. We couldn't have done what we did without them, and they helped a lot with like logistics, translation. They also had a huge number of doctors in their church, and so their doctors set up, and worked with people as well. And because of that, we had our clinic open for 3.5, 4 days. And through the course of the 4 days, we saw over 2,000 people go through that clinic. And we just think about the lives that we touched with that. The other part that I really liked of how much this church was involved was everyone who goes to that clinic, we talk to them about God, we talk to them about Jesus. And a lot of the times it's us doing that with these people, which is fine, which is great. But what I really liked about this clinic was that the people of that church were the people who talked to them more about God and about Jesus. And so I think in a way, it just helped build that connection a little bit better. You had your local peers that were talking to you. They could talk to them in the same language. And that I think really allowed more connections to be made. And they just, the local church was able to just interact with so many of their peers and talk to them about God. And then we were able to kind of follow through and pray for them. And so this church, they're going to be able to follow through with all of these people and kind of work them into their own church community. The picture on the right is our PT team. Those are all the PTs and our translators were just absolutely amazing. One thing that was a little bit different for me with this trip than some of my other trips was the idea of mentorship. And I'll go back, and when I was in the Gambia last year, we had a really big team on that trip, but there was, in particular on that trip, there were a lot of younger people on that trip. There were a lot of people who were in their 20s and in their 30s. And so at one point there was the team leader was like, look, there's a lot of young people on this trip. This is great. This is really encouraging. We want to pray for these younger people. And it was at that point that I looked over at my friend and I realized we had aged out of that younger category. And we were now of like the older, wiser, part of the group. So I took that from last year, and this year I felt like I was able to really apply that a little bit, in that there was a lot of mentorship that I was able to do with different people on the trip. So my interpreter was an 18-year-old girl who had just graduated high school, and she was interested in becoming a PT. And she got to spend the week in the PT clinic with us. And so we were able to, I really felt like I was able to mentor her a lot in terms of guiding her in where she wants to go on her PT journey. We also had another therapist on the trip with us. She was from the States. She's a new grad, and this was her first mission trip. And so my friend and I were really able to mentor her and kind of physical therapy in a different country, going on mission trips and things like that. There are also a lot of younger females who are on this trip as well, and a lot of them had just questions about life and things that I had been through, I had experienced, and just some of the conversations that we were just able to have with some of the other people on the trip in a community that they didn't necessarily had at home, but they had in this community. So I found that was like a really important and impactful part of the trip for me as well, was not only working with the people there, but just working with other people on the trip and really guiding them and answering any questions that they had as well. So that was just a different piece of this trip as well. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this part too. And I'll talk about this quickly because I know I'm running long. But there is just the idea that we went in there and we were there for a week, but we're partnering with people that's going to continue on the mission. So this is a picture of a medical clinic that they've built in one of the towns in Ecuador. And this is brand new, state of the art, absolutely beautiful, but also free. So anyone in that town can go to that medical clinic, get free services. And so just the idea that we were in, we were out, we made a difference, but there's still people there kind of carrying on the mission and doing the good work there. And so that, I guess that's my trip in a nutshell. And so, again, thank you for all your support and generosity of me for the trip. So thank you. There you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Debbie. I know many of you have been asking Debbie, so we just love being able to support the work that you do. And my prayer is that it would inspire all of us. We all have different skills, different passions. We all have different ways that we can embody the hope, love, healing of Jesus. And that's what it's about. It's not about just sitting there avoiding particular ways of living, but it's about engaging with the world. And what I want to do is today we have our Teacher Appreciation Day. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, and Jeanette, she's not here with us this morning, she had this idea that we want to honor and recognize all of our teachers. Debbie mentioned mentoring, and as a teacher, as an educator, someone involved in the schools, mentoring is what you do. You are offering education, but you're also raising the next generation in how to be human, how to walk in the world in a certain way. And they're looking to your example. They're looking to how you live, how you talk with them, the ways in which you talk to others. And what I want to do here in one moment is we're going to bring all of our teachers, all of our educators up here to the front, and we would like to say a prayer of blessing over you and honoring you for the work that you do on a regular basis. We also have dessert platters that I know some of you have signed up for. We have those. Mary has those. We'll hand those out if you'd like to bring those to your school, just as a way to honor all your peers that you work with throughout the week. We have one extra one, so if someone didn't sign up, you're like, hey, I want to bring dessert to my school this week, we'd love to hand that out to you. And before we do, then we'll close with that prayer of blessing for the teachers, and then a benediction, a prayer of blessing over all of us here, and we'll close with that this morning. But I do want to offer one practice that I found quite interesting from the Didache that I want to leave you with, something to go and do. And I understand this might be uncomfortable for some of you, and that's okay. If you don't want to do this, totally fine. But I absolutely love what this says. Furthermore, every day you should seek out the company of the saints. Who are the saints? It's you, yes. All throughout the New Testament, Paul begins his letters to the saints at Philippi, to the saints in this city. That is to be, through Christ, that is your identity. You are a saint. And I think when you look at yourself through that lens, it gives, like, you walk a little straighter, a little taller. Here's how Paul is describing me. Here's who I am because of Jesus. So the practice is every day, maybe you can't get together and have coffee, but you can send a text. You can ask how someone else is doing. You can offer a prayer for someone. Every day, text the saints. How's that? So that you can, and I love this, be helped by their conversation. Debbie talked about mentoring, and people had questions about life. We all have questions about life. We all need a little help on our journey. Isn't it great to have a community where together we can support and encourage one another on that journey. If you would like to engage with this practice, go grab someone here, maybe someone that you kind of know a little bit, and say, hey, could I have your number? And would love to just text you or call you or Instagram message you, whatever you want to do. And again, I understand this isn't for everyone, and that's totally fine. But I found this so compelling that I just wanted to throw it out there as a practice, because I know I can use encouragement. When I get a text from someone, one of you, and you're like, hey, how's it going? It lifts my spirits a bit. And that's what our community is all about. And that's what a church is all about, is that we're there for each other, not just on a Sunday morning, but throughout the week, because we all have our struggles and we all need the help of others to carry us through. So there's the practice. Grab someone, maybe you have someone's number, and just be intentional this week about reaching out to the saints. And you can even say, hey, what's up, saint? Or however you talk to people. It's totally cool. Now, teachers, would love to have you. Anyone who's involved in education, come down here. Let's say a prayer of blessing over you, and we'll close with this blessing this morning.